Y'all, I had a doozy of a conversation recently in a buyer consultation, and I want to tell you about it. So hang tight and buckle up because we are talking about that naughty C word.
If you've ever wondered what's really going on behind the scenes in a real estate transaction, you're in the right place. Whether it's the nail-biting negotiations, the crazy twists and turns throughout a transaction, or the moments that just make you want to pull your hair out, it's all going to be shared. I'm Brittney Frye, and I am the host of the Closing Chapters podcast. Here, we are going to talk about my career transaction by transaction since 2016. And we're also going to go through all of the golden nuggets that I've learned along the way that I would love to share with you. I want to shape your reality in real estate to a world that you can be confident, educated, and make really wonderful decisions for your financial future and build a real estate portfolio. No matter if you are a real estate investor, a first-time home buyer, or a luxury buyer, there's something to be had in this podcast. You're going to see it throughout this series that military is really my heart. That is my niche, and if you are a military buyer or seller, you will thrive listening to this podcast. So grab a seat at the closing table and let's close some chapters.
So recently, I had a conversation with a buyer, and it was a family endeavor, right? There's a primary person that's purchasing, and the parents were in the background of the conversation. And the topic of the commission came up, and I was explaining to them how it's a lot different for us now, the way that we handle it versus the way that it was previously in years past after we've had this NAR settlement lawsuit. We were talking about how the fact that it's always been the buyer's responsibility to pay their commission, but typically speaking, it's normally been able to be covered by the seller's behalf, and it was marketed publicly so we could see what was being offered, etc., etc. Okay, but here's the thing. It's always been negotiable, and it can always change, right? So even if it's plain as day, it is being marketed publicly, it still may not be the commission that I am requiring of you in our agreement that we have negotiated and said, yes, Brittney, you are worth X percent. And so this conversation can exist before or current day. It just didn't as much for some reason. But what I was asked very point blankly was, if the seller isn't willing to cover the commission and I am only willing to pay X, are you really going to ruin my transaction because of a commission? And I'll give you a hint. It was not my client that was saying that. It was a family member. Okay. So I said, here's the thing is, it is really a case-by-case basis and the full picture of the negotiation. I'm always going to try to negotiate the best that I can on your behalf. And I'm not one to let my clients fall. And it's honestly a fault of mine, if I'm being honest. And I was very honest with them, and we talked about that a little bit. I said, I tend to get myself in a little bit of trouble because I do a little too much hand-holding and reaching out and helping more than I should. And that's just the type of person that I am. So it is what it is. But my point in saying that was, I haven't really let anybody fall. We've always found a way. We've always worked around it. There's always been a meet in the middle, okay? But what I was explaining to them is everything in real estate is negotiable. However, when I work underneath of a brokerage, okay, that broker and the brokerage determines our set guidelines, okay? So my broker can say in our handbook for the office, for a listing, I require X percent to come into to be paid to the brokerage. For a buyer, I require X percent to be brought into the brokerage. Okay. And they're allowed to do that. They're allowed to have those parameters. It's their brokerage. They can dictate what we are or are not allowed to be at compensation wise. Okay. And so that's where she went, but if they say this and I'm only willing to do this, then what does that look like? And I was like, it looks like, what's the scenario? If the seller's going to cover it, then this is a null and void conversation. But what's your priority? Because there might be an opportunity where a seller will cover compensation, but not closing cost coverage towards the buyer's closing costs. So then we're going to talk about the ramifications of that. Or maybe they're willing to take compensation off the table. Maybe they're willing to help with closing costs, but not a home warranty, right? There's always going to be a parameter that we're going to have to discuss and figure out what's the priority and how can we make it so that everybody feels good and can move forward. And if we can't, then it's not the right property. So it's not necessarily a conversation ever of oh no, I'm not going to help you if I don't get paid. Okay. I can vouch for many agents that we honestly, the paycheck is the last thing on our mind. It really is. Now, there's a reality check that just if you have a job, a 9 to 5, you're not going in there and working for free. And we're in an odd dynamic where we're legitimately working for free until you purchase a property or until your property sells. Now that has changed a little bit because of some of these conversations, right? Some people do get high and mighty and they're like, hey, I don't have all that money. I shouldn't have to pay you that money. How do you expect to purchase a home? And if you want to go hire an attorney to write a contract for you, by all means do, but they're not necessarily going to negotiate on your behalf. They're going to say, what do you want in the contract? It also doesn't mean that they're going to submit that contract for you. And it also means that they're going to pay by the hour or by the item. And if you think that we are expensive as real estate professionals, you have no idea what it would be if you were paying by the hour for our work. I've listened to a lot of agents talk about this recently where there are a lot of models where they're saying it's like a cafeteria model where you can pick, hey, I want you to do this for this amount of money. And then by the end of the day, all of the things that you have needed done have far surpassed what the percentage would have been required of you. So for them, they're like, sure, you don't want to pay me a percentage. You can pay me per item. You can pay me per door that I open. You can pay me per time that we have to have a conversation, per time that I write an offer, per time that we have to counter, per time that I schedule your inspections, per time that I put together an appraisal packet. Do you get the point? There's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that we don't always come to the forefront and let you know that we're doing, which is kind of an us problem, right? Because you should know what we're doing to a degree. The other part is that we're here to help take care of the transaction and hopefully minimize some of the stress and chaos on your end. And that means taking care of things without you really knowing about it. So if you were to go to a doctor's office, okay, and they are running all of the tests, they're not coming back and telling you, all they're saying is, hey, we're going to run all these tests and we'll be back to you with the results, right? They're not saying, hey, the tech has taken it back to the lab. Hey, the lab has the test running. Hey, we have about 30 minutes left on that test. Hey, the results are in, but the doctor has to look at it. Hey, you are not getting an alert every step of the way for every item that they are doing. Does that make sense? And it's the same thing in our world. We're not here to tell you every step of the way, hey, I spent an hour working on your paperwork tonight. I spent an hour on the phone with the agent talking about our deal and what we could do to salvage it. I had to prove that the repairs that we're asking for were worthy. I had to prove our cost, our worth, our value to an appraiser, right? We're not here to shove that down your throat. But you also need to know that all of those things are existing in the background, and we are simultaneously taking care of that without you even having to lift a finger or know about it, which is amazing. That is what we are here for. Our value is to help you through this process so that you are not going it alone. And that all adds up to a value and a worth on our behalf that is a monetary allotment, right? So I really feel like sometimes this is like it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't conversation. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, honestly, because the reality is that personally, the paycheck is the last thing on my mind, okay? It really is. I want you to win. I want you to be successful. And if you've worked with me, you know that we are a we, okay? Our house, our transaction, we need to schedule. We're a team. It's not you against me. It's we. Okay? So I honestly take that to heart as in this is my transaction. I need to do my part for this purchase to happen, for this sale to happen. And that is so important to me. And there is no greater joy in my world of real estate than accomplishing a common goal that I've set with my clients. So pay is the furthest thing from my mind. And it's the same thing with brokers. Like a lot of times, realtors can be very hard up on, hey, I had a closing today. I need my check today. Or if a broker's going out of town, it's like, hey, let me know if you've got any closings coming up so that I can plan appropriately before I'm out of town. And it's like all this stress of, I'm not going to get paid until he comes back. Why? My philosophy, I tell my brokers all the time, every day's a good day to get paid. If I was waiting on this paycheck for something, then I'm in trouble. And that's not to say that it's all sunshine and roses, because who is, right? Finances suck for everybody these days. It's a hard topic all the way around. But this is all just to say you need to recognize that, one, there is no right or wrong. So if you really feel like you want to pay per item or per hour, have that conversation with your agent. I'll tell you, if there's not a guideline already in place in that brokerage, they're going to have to talk to their broker and they're going to have to get approval on what that looks like and how it could be. And the reason I know this is I just went through this not on a case-by-case basis, but like an item by item. But I have a staged approach that was brought to me by another agent that is doing really well with it, where it's meet your client where they're at, especially for listings, right? Let them choose how much you are or are not going to do and what that equates to in the commission style. So it's not necessarily like the cafeteria model where it's, okay, do this item and I pay you X amount. It's, I will do this list of items for this percentage. I will do this list of items for this percentage. And I will do this list of items for this percentage. And it escalates in the amount of things that we are going to do or the amount of time that we are spending with the client, right? And it's not changing the quality by any stretch of the means. The smallest package, so to speak, is the standard, everything that an agent's going to do to market your property the correct way. It's just like adding on the extras, extra times of communication, extra marketing, extra open houses, doing themed open houses, like really getting spicy and upping the game, doing extra videography or photography. Are we doing drone photography? Those type of things. How many times are we communicating? How many times am I asking for feedback? And spoiler alert, feedback is like a thing of the past. It is very hard to get agents to give feedback. And oh, by the way, they're being told you shouldn't give feedback because it could be used against you. That's another lawsuit waiting to happen. So sellers, if you are talking to your agent and saying, why aren't you getting feedback from anyone? Why don't you have anything to say to me? It's not really their fault. More than likely, they are trying so hard, and you literally are trying to pull teeth out of these other agents to get them to speak to you, and they're just not going to. Now, the big piece of that puzzle, the reality is, like, that comes into to be an issue if you circle back to that property and say, hey, I'm putting an offer in on this property, and then you had given feedback on it, then one, maybe you're giving some cards away to the seller, or two, the seller's going to have a salty taste in their mouth because they're going to be like, I already know that you don't like X, Y, and Z, and you're going to try to nickel and dime me. But here's the thing. I can be the same agent working with 3 different buyers. How do you know which buyer I brought in to that property on what day and what time? How do you know which one of them had that feedback? But that's the reality, is you don't know, but we assume. Right? That agent said. And here's the other key, is that the listing agent doesn't necessarily need to be sharing like my information when they're giving the feedback. It should be like a blanket thing where it's like just a form saying, hey, here's the feedback we received. It's not attached to an offer. It's not attached to any sort of negotiations. It is literally feedback. So if there was a broker open and a bunch of agents come through the house and they're all leaving feedback, they're not writing their names on those cards. They're just writing their feedback on a little note card and sticking it in a bucket. And that's all the seller's going to see. So they don't know where it's coming from. They just know that it's been given to them and that it's from real estate professionals. So if that were the whole scope and we were treating it like that, then a lot of that risk would go down, of course, and we could help sellers immensely by giving them the feedback that they need to make some better decisions. But all in all to say, when I wanted to propose that listing structure, I had to put that up to my broker and say, hey, what do you think about this? And the conversation was, interesting, let me look into it. You do not pass go. You do not have my good graces yet. So The whole point of that is really to outline and remind you that as agents, we do have negotiating power with you, with the deal, with everything. That is our job. Negotiating is a key component of our value. But there are parameters through our brokerage. And she said, if we hit that wall, then what do? If your broker says it has to be this, what are you going to do if we can't make that work? And I said, like I said before, it's going to be case by case basis. But if I feel comfortable and confident that like we can get this deal to the closing table, if we can meet in the middle a little bit further, then it's a conversation that we each have to have with our broker, right? Ultimately, it is our broker's decision, not ours. When you sign that listing agreement, you are signing it with the brokerage, and then the brokerage is designating me to be able to work with you, okay? So clients, customers, hear me loud and clear when I say this. Agents are not out to take your money. We are not here to say, if you don't pay me, then I won't do the work. Okay? That's never been the case because, once again, we get paid in the arrears. How many times do we have a transaction that never makes it to the closing table that we've spent tons of hours working on, and we are never going to see a dime for it? Okay? That's never been the forefront of our business. Maybe it should be, honestly. And that is one of the things that's changing a little bit, is that there are some brokerages, once again, brokerage has to agree that this is okay, but they're allowing their agents to request a retainer fee before they ever start working with them. And that could be a fee that gets credited back towards the balance due for the total commission. Or sometimes it's literally just a sunk cost. Hey, if you're going to work with me, it's going to be this retainer fee, and then my commission will be X. And before you say, oh, that's not fair, go talk to an attorney. See if their retainer fee goes back towards their services or not. Maybe some will, but I can guarantee you not 100%. I think that's the thing that we've got to remember, is that, one, there are parameters from a brokerage, right? Not anybody else. Our brokers are our end all be all. They are the person that we're looking up to. And if you are your own brokerage, then you can play ball however you want to, right? But two, once we have our guidance and our good graces from our broker, then we have different methods and capabilities. But the point is, if there is a will, there is a way. And it's not a will to take advantage of somebody. It's if we're all acting in good faith, if we are all in this together, we are all putting in as much of the cards as we possibly can, and we just have to make it work. There's more than likely a way. There is. But if you're so concerned or worried about just paying a straight percentage, then have that conversation with your agent up front. There is literally nothing set in stone until we sign agreements together. So if you feel like you'd be better off paying per, then ask them about it. The worst thing that's going to happen is they're going to go ask their broker, and their broker's going to say, no, we don't do that here. And then you're going to come back and say, hey, I asked my broker and he said, no, we don't do that here. I'm sorry, that's not an option right now, but I asked. That's the worst thing that's going to happen. Worst case scenario. Best case scenario, you think that jives well with you, and your agent goes and talks to their broker, and their broker says, do your deal. If that's what they want, that's what they want. Give me a price list for all the items, let me approve it, and then go for it. So, what do you think? How do you feel about that? Do you recognize that if you pay per item that it could be a lot more costly than the actual percentage of a sales price? Do you recognize too that if you're paying per item, it might get stickier or harder to get a seller to cover your commission? Because they're paying it more than likely either a set price or a set percentage. So I'm curious, what would be your preference, right? If you know it's all on you, what do you think's the winning answer there? Do you think it's paying a retainer fee up front and then knowing that you have the loyalty of your agent and that they're going to work for you and it's going to go towards your commission? I don't know. There's a lot to unhash, to just work out there and see how it feels. But the point in all of that is simply that there's not one answer. There really isn't. And even with the same client, we can be in 3 different transactions and it can be 3 different outcomes. Really, truly can be. So I hope that this is a little bit enlightening for you, insightful, and just a reminder that we're here to support you and have a common goal and dream of getting your real estate needs taken care of. Okay? So stop being so harsh and focusing so much on our commission. Because I can promise you at the end of the day, our commission is not what it seems in the grand scheme of things. In terms of if you were paying other people to do everything piece by piece, I promise you, I think people think that we get paid above the moon, and we honestly don't. And there's a lot of conversation about, people ask all the time, like in trainings and stuff, like to realtors, do you know what your hourly rate is? And most of us don't. We don't know the average amount of hours we spend on a transaction. We don't know the average amount of hours that we're spending on lead generation or what that would equate to. So they'll try to give you formulas and break it down. And more than likely, though, the reality is most agents that I hear are anywhere between $120 and like $200 an hour would be their hourly rate. If you combine all of the items that they're doing, the time that they're spending on each transaction on average, and then dividing that out by what they're making, right? Or what they should be making. And the point of that conversation is not typically around the commission at all. That the point of that conversation is you need to be hiring help for the items that are not high value, right? If I need somebody to send out postcards, should I be doing that or should I be paying someone to do that? That's where that conversation's coming in at. If I've got an event to plan for, do I go to the grocery store and pick up stuff, or do I send an assistant to the grocery store and get all of the items, right? Make them a honey-do list and say, here's what I need it set up at, this is the time for everything. Oh, by the way, I need RSVPs to go out. Like those type of things where it's all the lead generation, the admin stuff going on in the background. But the thing that's very interesting about that is, what if we are finding out our true hourly rate, what if we were charging that? What would it look like? And that's a conversation we have quite often. And it's amazing. If you took that hourly rate and multiplied it by the time that it takes us throughout a transaction from our first point of contact to closing table, it would be far more than what we actually get compensated. Far more, like triple. So it's interesting to see, because on other facets that there's no meat in the middle with that. Attorneys, doctors, they're not telling you like, oh, I'll change my rate for you. No, it all goes to insurance, or you get billed just the same, and whatever insurance doesn't pay, you're paying the remainder, and that's all there is to it. We're a professional too. We take classes, we have to uphold a license, we take continuing education classes, post-licensing classes. So just an accountant, just a nurse, just a teacher, just an attorney, just like a doctor, we are a professional giving you a service. And we have a lot to maintain behind that. So please know that we really do have value and worth to you and deserve it, earned it, all of the above. But there's always different ways to handle it. And remember, it's always going to be a conversation of priority. Where is our priority and what can we do? And in the future, we are going to have a whole nother conversation about compensation on the flip side of this, where there is a huge reality that a lot of people are not showing properties, or buyers are choosing not to see properties because of a commission. And it is just wrong, because everything is negotiable. So we're going to hash that out in the future. So you need to be watching out for that, because that's going to be a spicy conversation, really spicy, because it's very controversial right now of what agents are being told to do versus what seems to make sense in reality, and is there a right or a wrong way to do it? So much to unpack there, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm hoping that I have somebody in mind that I want to pull in to my wheelhouse on this, because we agree on this conversation and we both feel strongly on it, and I'm hoping that we can share our value and point of view and show you how, as agents, we can't get caught up in compensation. We have to do our job and make sure that you see the houses that you desire to see, and then make a plan of action from there. So more to come on that, but all that to say, come on folks, It's okay. Everybody's got to get paid for a job that they're doing, right? You're going to pay the plumber, you're going to pay the doctor, you're going to pay the babysitter, you're going to pay your realtor. That's all there is to it. We're all doing a job for you. So don't let that stop you in the middle of a transaction. Be creative, have your priorities in line, and realize that it will all happen. We will get to that closing table as long as you're willing to be open-minded and be creative with your partner in crime, aka your realtor, and let them take care of you the best that they can.